Well, the fight over the state's assault weapons ban expects to continue into the federal courts. 23 News reporter Jim Haggerty talks to local lawmakers who say they're also gearing up for a battle over House Bill 218, which prohibits gun companies from marketing to children.
When it comes to weapons, that if there's advertised, should be geared toward adults and not kids.
State Senator Steve Stottlemyl voted for House Bill 218, which prohibits just that.
This type of advertising is just dangerous.
Republican Dave Severson says the legislation serves no purpose.
What they call marketing is so broad. It really is. There's not a real targeting of young people because young people can't purchase anyways.
Stottlemyl says he has seen ads that don't sit well with him, especially in light of deadly mass shootings that have happened right here in Illinois.
We've seen ads where you have a small child, 4 or 5 years old, with an assault weapon in their hands.
Severson says the ads target adults who enable kids to be responsible gun owners.
There's a lot of youth programs that are out there that are training young kids how to use firearms, how to use firearms safely, whether it's hunting or recreation.
State line residents are also divided on the issue.
You don't need these really small children owning firearms. Normally it was like I was always taught to keep firearms away from kids, not make firearms for them.
I think children need to be taught how to safely use guns and how to be comfortable with them and around them.
Working for you in the state line, Jim Haggerty, 23 News.
Some opponents say this violates their First and Second Amendments. However, those in favor say it's no different than banning vape companies from marketing products to teens.